Hello and welcome. We are so happy that you are joining us for the Teaching with Tinkercad webinar series. We decided to start a little bit early tonight. So for those of you who are just joining us, please feel free to warm up the chat with this warm-up question. We do especially appreciate your presence tonight, and that tomorrow, if you're joining us live, is the Friday before Halloween, which is always, I feel like, a really fun time to particularly if you're teaching middle school, engage with students. So we always appreciate you being here, but we especially appreciate you being here tonight. So the question for our warm-up activity is, what is your superpower as a teacher? And how does it help you in the classroom? So if you're just joining us, do feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and to share what your superpower is as a teacher and how does it help you. We are intrigued by all of your superpowers. And I'm already seeing people warming up the chat. Jenny, is there any interesting superpowers you're reading about right now?
I'm not seeing any superpowers. I'm seeing people reporting where they're calling in from, which is great.
Well, I feel like teachers' superpowers are being friendly and connecting with one another. So that's definitely one superpower that's being
got a couple forming relationships with students and families to go along with what you just said.
Nice. Feeling psychic. Maybe being psychic is my teacher superpower.
And creativity to relate the topic to anything my students, or almost anything they can think of.
I love teachers who are like that, particularly math teachers. When math teachers can make math creative and fun, that was always one of my favorite things as being a student, and also working with colleagues who are able to make those interdisciplinary connections.
I think my superpower is being a big kid myself, which helps me connect with students and their interests.
Yeah, being a big kid, I think, is helpful, particularly, not to dwell upon middle school, but I feel like I always got along with my middle school teaching colleagues because we were all kind of arrested in that stage of development sometimes.
My industry experience prior to being a teacher.
Oh, so cool. Career changers are always fascinating to work with as a colleague and also to have as a student, because they're able to make those real world connections to what you're learning.
Endless curiosity.
Yes. I feel like, how could you be a teacher without being curious about new things and inspiring that curiosity in kids?
Here's a good one. My superpower is seeing when my students need a place to vent.
that is, I feel like, one of the most important superpowers. I think also the teacher look was something that I always really found to be, it was like you almost like gain it when you first enter the classroom, that ability to communicate to students with your eyes without saying a word. So it's the top of the hour right now, and we do have a full agenda tonight. I'm super excited about it. I am looking forward to learning along with you. But I think we'll get started with the formal agenda. That being said, please keep introducing yourselves to each other in the chat, and let others know what you guys are talking about. So superpowers as a teacher. How does it help you in the classroom? So again, if you're just joining us tonight, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so glad you're here as part of the Teaching with Tinkercad webinar series. This is actually episode 2 of this school year, and the theme for tonight is Level Up with Tinkercad. So before we begin, I just want to formally introduce myself. My name is Kellyanne Mahoney. I'm a youth program specialist at Autodesk. I was a teacher in the Boston Public Schools for 13 years. I taught middle school. I'm also a national board certified teacher as well. I also want to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Jenny. Jenny, do you want to say hi? Just so
hi, everyone.
Knows who you are.
I'm the content development manager for youth here at Autodesk. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jenny. And Tinkercad is part of the Autodesk family. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, and also Instructables. So again, stay connected with each other, connect with each other in the chat. You can also connect with us on social at Tinkercad, at Instructables, at Autodesk EDU, or also by using the hashtag TinkerTogether, which is a fun hashtag to explore, particularly on Twitter. So we are joined by an illustrious group of panelists tonight and special guests. So Netia McCray, who is a teacher, an educator, a maker educator, MIT alumna, and the founder and executive director of Bajika is here tonight. We also are joined by Darin Hughes, who is a principal UX designer for Tinkercad, and Guillermo Melantoni, who is our fearless leader of Tinkercad, and also on the theme of level up, I've leveled up Guillermo, so we can see his cool shirt as well. So lots in store for this evening. How to participate, keep doing what you're doing. I'm noticing there's 76 messages, 77 in the chat right now. So keep connecting with each other in the chat. We are gonna kind of move things a little bit along faster tonight. So do know that we're gonna be pushing out questions to you so that you can keep kind of connecting with each other in the chat. And you are going to be connected to real people too. So if you have any questions during the presentation tonight, all of these animated characters are actually real humans who are in the chat, and they are here to answer your questions as well. And we will have a live Q&A at the end too. But before we begin, paging Dr. Daria, let's take a pulse of the room.
Yes. So we love to start by understanding how often you use Tinkercad. And the reason is because this helps us pace the webinar as well. So we're going to launch a poll right now. Sorry, wrong poll. We're going to launch a poll right now before we begin to ask whether you're totally new to Tinkercad, if you've never used Tinkercad, if you use it once a year, once a quarter semester, almost every quarter semester, or almost every week. So we're seeing the responses trickle in. It looks like we've got quite a good number of people who are fairly new to Tinkercad and have never used it before, so welcome to Tinkercad. It's about 1 in 5 of the participants live tonight. And then we've also got a healthy number of people who are using Tinkercad almost every week. So we would love to hear from you about how you're using Tinkercad, and also those who use it once a quarter or almost every quarter and semester.
Another great reason to stay connected in the chat too. So you have a lot of members of the Tinkercad community who are here, who can also probably answer your questions just as well as we can from your real world perspective of using Tinkercad almost every week. So Daria, are we good with the poll?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. All right, so our agenda for this evening, we think we're cute by making it in little different levels. So level 1, we're going to start with Tinkercad and talk about how you can level up even within Tinkercad using one of the Tinkercad lesson plans as an inspiration. Level 2, you're going to hear from Darin, who's going to talk to you about how you can level up with your teaching and your classroom management skills through teaching with Tinkercad Classrooms. And he's also even going to share with you a brand new feature within Tinkercad Classrooms that allows you to push out activities to your students. And then finally, level 3, we're going to talk about how you and your students can graduate from Tinkercad to Fusion 360. That discussion will be led by our dynamic duo of Guillermo and Netia. Guillermo is going to talk a lot about when to do this, why to do this, and then Netia is going to provide us with a really concrete illustration of a project that can help you kind of push your students to the next level. Do stick around at the end. We will have our live Q&A, but do continue to let us know your questions in the chat. And you can even save some special questions for the Q&A at the end for our live Q&A. But to begin with level 1, it all begins with Tinkercad. So Tinkercad is a free, easy to use web application that equips the next generation of designers and engineers with the foundational skills for innovation. So 3D design, electronics, and coding. And to talk a little bit more about that foundation that your students will gain, I'd like to invite Jenny to talk a little bit about this awesome infographic she made.
Yeah, so as educators, you might ask, how can students use Tinkercad to ideate, create, and solve practical problems in a world that's becoming increasingly digitalized? Tinkercad gives students workplaces in, as Kellyanne said, 3D design, coding, and electronics, making it a great tool for building foundational skills for innovation. And these 3D digital literacy and design skills include design and make innovation, spatial reasoning, and computational design, which helps students learn to solve problems in new ways and prepare for tomorrow's jobs in industries like architecture, engineering, manufacturing, construction and digital media, and others. And practicing these skills also helps students prepare for more advanced software like Fusion 360, which is used in some of the careers they're exploring.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for defining this foundational literacy that students can gain through using Tinkercad, and then maybe graduating to other tools as well. So what sorts of things can students make, or young people make, or even adults make using Tinkercad? They could make something small, like a toy car. And then you can see all the places that they can go when they access one of our professional tools, potentially for free through the education community, such as Fusion 360. You can see that you can take it into Fusion to fill it, to chamfer, to show a cross section, to apply physical materials and render. Other things students can design using Tinkercad, they can think architecturally, think big. And then maybe they might be ready to graduate to another one of our professional tools like Formit, which is a conceptual architectural tool where students can even explore computational design in architecture. So they don't need to wait, though, to be 13 to explore computational design, because they can do that within Tinkercad using the Tinkercad code blocks environment. And not only can they design computationally, they can also show you their computational thinking through exporting their design as an animated GIF, as you can see here. And then maybe they're ready, once they turn 13 to go to the next level with a product like InfraWorks, which is our civil engineering software, and maybe take their bridge and put it in a real world context and do a traffic simulation of how traffic would work on their bridge. One of my favorite things about Tinkercad is I really think that it helps students see themselves in STEM and also helps put the A in STEAM. And don't worry, you can level up even within Tinkercad. And we're going to share an activity with you tonight to show you how you could do that. Tinkercad makes all of this accessible at all different angles through really exciting features, such as the augmented reality feature we'll talk about a little bit tonight. So if you've never seen Tinkercad before, this is what the 3D editor looks like in Tinkercad, which is a great place to start. And all you're doing is grabbing, dragging, and dropping shapes onto the work plane, combining those shapes to make more complex shapes. You might even add to that complexity by subtracting from those shapes and making holes out of them. And then ultimately you can export your design, and you can 3D print it, or you could do all other types of things with it to make it real for students. So we're going to take now a little virtual field trip back in time to last week, where I can share with you an activity that we did for Massachusetts STEM Week at the Created By Festival at the Boston Children's Museum. So this activity was inspired by a Tinkercad lesson plan. We will be sharing these slides with you later. So if you like this activity, I've actually linked to the infographic that shows you how to do it with students in the slideshow. But you can access the lesson plans, which are free on Tinkercad. If you go to the Teach tab, and you can see all these exciting topics that you can explore with students through using Tinkercad. One of our most popular lessons is actually this Create an Avatar lesson. So I'm just going to show you just a sneak peek of what it looks like. All of the lesson plans are formatted in a similar user-friendly way. They are aligned with standards like ISTE standards, Common Core standards, Next Gen Science standards. They're also media rich. So teachers, for the most part, created all of these lesson plans, and they know that in addition to teaching the tool, there's also other, features, like you might want to show students a video or give them a handout that they can type into. So the lessons are very media rich in that way, and that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy them. So this activity, we adapted, and that's one of the things that we want to make clear to teachers is do please take these lesson plans and make them your own. So you can level them down for younger students, you can level them up for high school students. So we began this activity similar to what you see in the lesson plan by exploring the concept of what is an avatar and encouraging students to think about how they might want to represent themselves or express their identity through making an avatar. So this begins by sketching on paper, as you can see the student did here. And we actually provided isometric grid paper to give it kind of an engineering perspective to designing it. So he sketched his design first on paper. You can see the student in the upper right, she did the same thing. So she sketched it, and then she jumped into Tinkercad and started to think about how she could translate that 2D design on paper into something that's 3D by manipulating just basic shapes in Tinkercad. When students finished their designs, we were able to then take their designs and send them to augmented reality using the augmented reality feature that you can access through the iPad, the Tinkercad app on an iPad. So you can see here, we took a picture of the students with their design. So it's kind of overlaid in augmented reality. And this is what it looked like from behind the camera. And we were able to even, so the students could interact with their designs, they could pose with them. And then we just used like a wireless cell phone printer to actually print the picture out and give it to them. So one of my takeaways from this activity was just how proud students were to see their design go from paper to digital. And then even just to have it printed on paper was super exciting for them and help them make it real. Another takeaway was just how easy using Tinkercad Classrooms made this whole activity to facilitate. And Darin's going to talk a little bit more about that. But all of the Chromebooks that we used for the activity were all linked to the same Tinkercad Classroom. And then we made the iPads co-teachers so that we were able to easily kind of access the kids' designs and take their pictures. Just lastly, another thing that it made me think about was just even someone as young as this toddler was able to engage in this activity and find meaning in, even just collaging together some shapes from the shapes library. Behind the cat, there's actually some basic shapes too. And this got me thinking. So I was thinking about how could we also level up this activity for high school students. We actually had the opportunity to test out this activity with awesome college freshmen in Boston before we did it at the Children's Museum. And I will say that they had just as much fun doing this as even the little ones at the Children's Museum. And they were new to 3D design as well. And that's okay, even if you're in college. If you're new to it, Tinkercad's a fine tool to introduce 3D design at any level. So you could then tie in, some concepts that are kind of more appropriate for older students. So thinking about the concept of what is the metaverse, for example. And just thinking about, this new frontier of the metaverse introduces kind of interesting questions to explore, like the ways that, issues like representing race and gender and other ways of representation. You could have students think about that and then kind of ponder the question of how would you want to represent yourself in the metaverse? The metaverse also, you could use digital currency, for example, or virtual currency in the metaverse. And even that currency art is becoming a form of that. So, how does something like NFTs, which is a fun topic that kids really are interested in these days, how might that change the role of the artist in society? Or you could even talk to them about generative art that a lot of NFT artists are exploring through their art. Does it enhance or does it hinder creativity? That's actually an interesting debate right now in the community. And you could even introduce through Tinkercad, just the concept of criteria and constraints. So maybe limit students to they can only use one shape to make their design, like the box shape. Or you might even have them, think about like volume and surface area. So like, how could they have the most amount of surface area with the fewest, shapes or the least amount of volume? How also, maybe could you think about like pixel art or voxel art and think about ways that you could employ those techniques in your design. You might also have students kind of think about what's the most efficient way of designing their avatar. And you might even explore that through using Tinkercad code blocks as well. So here's just a little sneak peek of that. And then you could send this as a part into your shapes library in Tinkercad. You might also have them explore kind of the concept of libraries in modular design. So how could they optimize their design by taking some aspects of their design? This is actually me. I have pink glasses. So how could I take some aspect of my design and turn it into a part and then think about how I might reuse it in another context. So we hope that helped you start to think about how you can level up within Tinkercad. In the chat right now, if you could let us know just in a few words, share what the next level might be for you in your Tinkercad journey. So please do keep connecting in the chat and sharing all of your aspirations. But we're going to move on actually to the next segment in which Darin is going to talk about how you can level up using teacher features within Tinkercad. So Darin, please feel free to usurp the screen.
I am taking the screen.
You have the power.
All right, so today I'm actually really excited to be able to talk about a new feature we have for Tinkercad's Classrooms called Class Activities. And before I really jump heavily into that, I wanted to go just a quick touch on what is Tinkercad Classrooms and why we even have that. So for those that are new, and anybody else who may have seen this, bear with me. Tinkercad Classrooms is, oops, sorry, too fast. Tinkercad Classrooms really are a way we put together that help you organize your students. So help you get them into Tinkercad really quickly, help you create their accounts if you want to use seats. You can use seats without a lot of personal data with just a class link and a nickname, or you can have students create their full Tinkercad accounts using email or Google Classroom to log in and join your classes. So it's, in a nutshell, it's a way to organize and view and review and moderate your student work as they go along with you on this journey in Tinkercad. So as we were working on what's next for Tinkercad Classrooms, and something we heard over and over again, loudly and clearly from people, and we had a lot of internal stakeholders with the same idea, was how can I share designs with my students without making them public on the gallery? My designs might be private. I may not want the attention. I don't want to go out there and find something or have my students hunt the gallery. So, you know, in a high level, Tinkercad activities are really about allowing you to begin sharing with your students in a more direct way. So today we're going to take a quick journey with Mr. Wombat and see what he does with his class. Mr. Wombat here has set up a few activities down below, and I'm going to run through a quick video of what that looks like. But in a nutshell, it's a new tab in the classroom view. So Mr. Wombat's Muddy Science class now has something called activities underneath it. And so if I jump forward, once he's made an activity, he can share designs directly with the students and focus them in on just this one today. This is the one I want you to copy or look at or review. And then students will be able to share their work back with him inside the classroom activity and kind of condense it all around a project or a theme or just today's work. So here's an example really quick, following Mr. Wombat as he jumps into his class. Let's imagine it's just before Monday class. And the way you find it is go to your classes at the top of the Tinkercad nav, pick a class if you've already got one, or create a new class and get your students in. Here he's got a bunch of students already signed up and going. And he goes to the new activities tab. So once he clicks that, it's really easy to create a new activity. So all you have to do is click the create button and think about what you want to say about this theme or what you're going to do today. There's a really long pause here. I might have talked too fast for my own video. But today we're going to talk about DNA maybe. And so he's talking about the building blocks of DNA. We're going to use code blocks, and that's his example. And enter a title, and all you got to do is a title and a description, which is optional. He's going to paste in some things and create that first activity. One thing to notice as it transitions here is there's fun colors with these. Right now they're sort of random, and you can kind of see how those are created and see how that works, play around. Maybe in the future you can choose those colors. Once you get into a new activity, it's empty. So do you want to share a design, maybe a 3D design, a circuit, or some code blocks? Today, Mr. Wombat's going to create a simple 3D design. I'm not going to go into it too deeply. We're not really focusing on what he makes in the design, but how he shares it. So he's got a template to copy, and he moves back to his activities view, and there it appears. So as soon as this is created, every student in that class would see the activity appear and the design that's shared in it appear. Another way that Mr. Wombat could share things is go to any design in his dashboard, use the gear menu, and say, add this design to my class activity. Pick the class, and then pick activities that you've created for that class. So he's going to add this one to our DNA example. Once he figures out which one to pick, And head back to the activities, take a look at it. And here he's shared a whole bunch. He's got different kinds. He's got a code blocks. He's got a 3D design, and he's already got some intrepid students that have taken on. Maybe saw him do it immediately and have already started adding their work. So Mabel's added some DNA components, and there's some 3D designs in there as well. So that's the teacher view. I'm going really quick. That's the teacher view at a high level of what this lets you do. Let's jump real fast into something all the teachers ask us as soon as we show a new feature. Yeah, but what are my students going to see? So today we're going to follow Mabel, who's one of the students in that class. And Mabel comes into class today, and she knows that Mr. Wombat's created a new assignment or an activity to do. So she goes and checks her classes. And there's Mr. Wombat's Monday science class. Opening that up, she sees all the activities he's created with the most recently edited one at the top. And she's going to open up and see what's inside modeling with code blocks. And within this, she can copy and tinker any of the designs he shared. Anything she copies and tinkers will appear within the activity, so they'll all be associated together. She can also make new designs that will appear in this activity. So today, she's going to copy one of the code blocks and see what that does and follow his instructions at the top to see how she might take that a little bit further. So again, not focusing on the specifics of code blocks today. We'll just hit play and see what happens. And it creates a few pieces. This is actually taken from one of our amazing teachers in our community, Efren, and I'm sorry, I forget the last name. We'll follow up and put it in there. But there's Mabel's newest thing. So she's got her DNA components in there, and Mr. Wombat can immediately go check out what she's done, see what her work looks like, and maybe even modify or help her out with it. So that's activities in a nutshell. Activities is really just a new way to let you focus your kids in on what you're doing right now, to stick them to the theme so they don't have to search all over or go hunt through the gallery. And also so you as a teacher don't have to make stuff public, and you can kind of protect your designs and your students' designs from the Wild West that is the public gallery. So having said that, oops, sorry. Head on over to our blog. So we got a blog post that supports this, that talks about in detail how to do this a little bit more, goes through step by step. And one thing I want to touch on before I leave is to see all this stuff. If you're not seeing Classrooms at the top of your Tinkercad, you need to make sure that you go in there and set yourself as a teacher. It's really easy to do. It's also included on the blog post at the end there, how to go in and say, yes, I am a teacher and I want to teach students on Tinkercad. As soon as you do that, it's free along with everything else. Suddenly you'll get all these amazing classroom features that you can use to share with your kids. And I think that's it. I will release it back.
Mr. Wombat is the best. Thank you, Darin. I didn't know you had Mr. Wombat too.
Mr. Wombat's going to be in there. Yep.
Efren, I feel like he might be Mr. Rodriguez, but I'm not 100% certain. But
I don't know.
Everyone should follow him on Twitter because he's great.
Efren R.
Yeah. All right, so heading back to wrapping up this segment, we thought that a question that we're interested in hearing about from you is, which activity would you make first? So what would be the first activity that you might push out to your students through using this new feature? So I'm sure that everyone is probably interested in what everybody else is thinking, so do please keep sharing that in the chat with each other. So moving on to our third segment, which is divided into two parts. So part A is first. We're going to hear from Guillermo, who's going to talk a little bit about when and why you might want to move to Fusion. So from Tinkercad to Fusion. Guillermo, take it away.
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen. Oh, you have to stop sharing before.
You do have the power to usurp me, but it's okay.
I just used my powers wisely. Great powers, great responsibilities, somebody said. Okay, good. So good afternoon, good night. I saw some people from Europe, so that might be like insanely late, like 1 a.m. So thanks for staying extremely ridiculously late for this. Saw a lot of people from Latin America. So, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están todos? What's tardes? See, a mis hermanos and my brethren from there. I'm from Uruguay, by the way. So I'm the lead for Tinkercad. I'm also product manager for Fusion 360. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what can be done, kind of this moment in which you might feel that the students are ready for something beyond Tinkercad, and how can we do it? And it's very important sometimes to just really understand when, because bad timing on these things can be terrible, right? Just if somebody's not prepared for something, imagine, going from a bike with training wheels to a bike without training wheels, right? If they're not ready, you know what happens, right? So there's little accidents and a lot of pain. So same here. We need to be very clear on when to do it, because it's an amazing journey, and we just need to make sure that we provide that experience properly. So and again, we see Tinkercad specifically because of the kind of objects that it mostly makes as a great story, a great art, right? Going from creating little products, little designs, right? From the very beginning, right? So we've seen this happening from early elementary school, even kindergarten, right? Going into middle school at some point. Kids start asking, okay, what's next? What else can I do? Or how can I do this with Tinkercad? And all of a sudden, we have ways, maybe with a lot of workarounds, but then there's one very simple way to do it on let's say mechanical design software or architectural software, which makes more sense, just like what Kellyanne was sharing at the beginning. And yes, as we go into high school, college, or the work environment, this is a progression, right? And we think we have a very good story, and not only a story, but we have a very good solution that lets you get started. And for those kids that wants to follow a path in design or engineering or architecture, in this particular case on design and engineering, there's a very clear path, and we just want to make sure that you understand it, or at least you get our point of view on this. But first of all, it's important to understand what kids come with, right? So, and probably in most classes, at least in the US, there's a bin with little wooden blocks, right? Maybe they're plastic now sometimes, or kids play with Minecraft, or they do Legos, right? So, or Lincoln Logs, or whatever ripoff of any of those, right? So that's an aggregation mindset, right? You just put things together, right? Based on putting things on top of each other and working based on that. And somehow Tinkercad at the beginning can be seen as that, as the digital counterpart of that, right? So you can use all those elements that we provide you and create something based on that. And that's a different mindset towards, if you're a technology teacher that's already used to CAD, to mechanical CAD or AutoCAD or whatever. For example, if I ask you how would you, and not asking you right now, but just think about it, right? If I ask you how to build this chair, there's a high chance, right? I can bet some of my guitars out there that you will say, okay, this is the way to do it, right? So I have a structure for the seed, I have, or something like this, right? But the key here is that for a kid, probably what they see is this, right? Aggregation. And Kellyanne was showing something similar also with the avatars, right? So it's a very simple way to do it. And that's the reason why something like Minecraft has become so popular, right? You just build based on blocks, and you also mine blocks. Our mining of blocks becomes the grouping when you make a whole, right? So again, familiar concepts. Familiar concepts are very important, because then you don't move somebody from here to here into a completely new environment, which is nothing, because nothing is terrifying at all ages, right? Nothing else is very terrifying. So what you want is something there. So on Tinkercad, our controls look like what you do on PowerPoint or on Photoshop for making things bigger or smaller. And our mental model makes a lot of sense for somebody that plays Minecraft or something like that. You drag stuff on the screen like you do on Plants vs. Zombies when you're trying to defend your garden, right? So all of those things are known, right? My kids know it already. Because a next step, when you try to go from 2D to 3D, not by aggregation, by sketching, it's a lot of abstraction, right? So if I draw something like this, right, which is a very simple sketch, that sketch, depending on the technique you use for modeling, can become any of these, right? Could be an extrusion, could be a sweep, could be a loft, could be a revolve, right? And that's a lot to take. And I've been training in my past life as an architect on School of Architecture, like 18, 19, 20 years old, on Revit and AutoCAD, on different things. And that mindset takes a while. It's almost like at high school/college level that they really understand the abstraction of sketching into 3D. It's not simple, it's not obvious. And if we're coming with that because we already know it and we take it for granted, and we just put kids on that without something at first, it's not gonna be good. So that's something else to understand. And we are definitely trying to do those things with Tinkercad, right? So creating a product mindset, design mindset. We start with those simple objects. Those simple objects can create less simple objects, right? So kind of this gasket here, I mean, I could say, okay, this is a flat box with 2 wedges and a cylinder with a hole, right? That's as simple as that. But that is a very well-known object on any workbench, right? So, and the thing that you can create shapes based on that, it also tells us that we are starting to create the idea of a library, right? That you can reuse things. And that concept is the same that you would use if any of you that are kind of familiar with the mechanical world know the McMaster-Carr catalog, right? Any object, just look around you. Anything that you see around was designed based on parts that are already parts that are new, right? So somebody has designed those things, and then a lot of pieces from catalogs, right? So it's important to understand how to build based on libraries, and this is something that we introduced in Tinkercad, and now also we allow some people to publish to everybody on the new data shape panel that you probably, hopefully, you're enjoying a lot. So yeah, so from the very beginning, which in most cases maybe has been a name tag, and I love name tags because it's a flat thing that's very easy to build. It's a box maybe with a cylinder to the end and a name and a hole. If you print that, there's a high chance that it will print correctly, right? If the printer is decently set up, it's fast because we know that patience is not there, right? On a classroom, it's wearable. It has your name, so it's relatable. You can brag about it later, or you can show it to your family. It's everything that's good about the first project. That's a name tag, right? So, but that wears off. I mean, how many versions of name tags can you make, right? So then you can keep going on and start looking into, well, what happens if we add some electronics, some lights, or some sounds, or to projects, to the point in which this is a line following robot designed in Tinkercad and then kind of refined in Fusion, right? So, and this is the idea of introducing design concepts and best practices, and then taking you slowly but steadily into the right things. Could be Fusion again, could be Revit, could be Maya, could be anything, right? But let's focus on the design, like more the mechanical engineering design part. So we do have an ecosystem. You all know about it, and maybe you're very focused on one part of the ecosystem. That's okay. When you put everything together, all of a sudden that is just like mind-blowing, because all of a sudden your plastic thing that you did on the 3D environment, added with some lights or some sensors and maybe some behavior, both on coding on Arduino or microbits or on code blocks. It's just the way people build things later, right? Because the same things that you see here are not very different to 3D design and fabrication, electronic design for mechatronics, or 3D parametric alternative design, and just big names, right? That you know when you move forward into the professional world or even the post-secondary world. But at the end of the day, it's a progression, right? You started somewhere, right? You started kind of doing 2 by 2 plus 2, right? You didn't do integrals at the beginning because you were not meant for that. So yeah, we want all these kids, all these people that are doing the code blocks for a T-shirt, or making the pencil holders, or sketching with Scribble, right? Becoming these potentially, right? Again, not everybody in a classroom will become a designer or an engineer, but those who want to have a very clear path. And the when, it's hard to say, okay, it's not exactly when they're 13 or when they're 12 and a half, or in September the 5th, everybody's ready, right? So it's a process, right? Just like with anything that they learn, right? So, but you start getting questions like, how can I smooth the edges? How can I make a bevel? How can I follow the models with the same thickness everywhere, especially when it's not uniform? Can I control it better? Can I pull this face, just this face, not the whole thing, just in space. Can I make it bigger than 1 meter? Just like 1 meter sounds too small. Can I make models look better, right? It's just like, I like the toonish thing, but I just want to make something like I see on some ads out there. A classic, can I get more resolution to a cylinder, right? So we have people just found ways to create ridiculous amount of resolution on a cylinder in Tinkercad that's kind of killing our servers, when maybe the answer is just have it with normal resolution in Tinkercad and send it to Fusion for whatever you need to do later, if that requires so much resolution. Can I make drawings, like documentation, right? Can I make something move? Can I add textures, right? All of those things, in many cases, the answer is no, because we have not get there yet. But in many cases, it's because by design, because we don't think that adding so much complexity to a tool like Tinkercad, we already have the good one, the kind of the things that can go later, right? So we don't want to have more complexity on a tool that is beautifully simple. And that's kind of one of the reasons it has been so successful, because if you start with Tinkercad, you can focus on a project as opposed to focus on teaching 5,000 commands. You have 3 or 4 commands to teach. Then you just start working and magic happens at that point. That is not the case on anything else. Right, so this is an example, and I'm going a little fast just to make sure that Netia has some time. This, as you know, we added microbit not long ago, so you can now use the microbit controller with, and in this case with some coding to just do a game, right? So instead of just holding the microbit, I wanted to have a little controller, like a switch, something like that, right? So in this case, the exercise is creating a controller for the microbits, and then what can I do if I take it a little further? So as you can see here, I did the model in Tinkercad. It's a whole, this whole red part is pretty simple, really. It's just a box with a couple of with a little bit of a relief here, and 2 half cylinders on the sides, in which just has to hold it. And then I made it hollow on the bottom, so I can put the microbit, because it will basically get stuck here and here, so it will not move on this direction. Of course, it can fall. So I said, okay, instead of building another part here, why don't we just make a hole and we can pass through 2 popsicle sticks? So then you can have an excuse to have an ice cream day, right? And just use those things, just wash them first, just to take them all the way through. And you have some sort of free printed /DIY controller for your game on the microbit. So you're dealing with everything we do, right? With coding, with electronics, with 3D. But I just really wanted to make it, just take it a little further. So I can at that point say, okay, well, maybe what I want is just to send this to Fusion, because I really want those edges to be smoother, because if not, it's just not comfortable, right? Or I want to see how fast it breaks, because, you know, just like, right? How long it's going to take to break or stuff like that. So on Tinkercad, under the send to option, we have Fusion 360. Of course, at that point, you need to have Fusion 360 installed on your computer, or if not, it will tell you how to download Fusion 360. You can, once this is done, what happens here is that we are taking the whole recipe of your model, taking up to a server that recreates that same thing on the other side on native Fusion data. So this is not an export. An export will give me a mesh or an STL, something like that, that I could import on any software, but that is really unusable at that point, right? So basically at that point, what I do is it just opens in Fusion. Ta-da! Done. No magic, no, it's not like a cooking show in which I miss like 55 options here. This is what shows up in Fusion when I do this, as long as all of the objects are basic shapes, of course, right? So which I have to say, we don't just send everything, we send the things that the basic shapes, and eventually we'll be able to send some more stuff. But for now, we are just sending basic shapes and SVG imports. So what I'm going to do now is just go a little fast into some best practices on this, right? So I already said it, native Tinkercad into native Fusion. This is what a Tinkercad model would look in Fusion or in any mechanical software if I exported a mesh and took it into here. This is a soup with triangles, and anybody on the geometry world will say that a mesh is a polygon soup, because it doesn't really have any information beyond the fact that it's triangles creating something. When you go into a solid model like this one, what you have here is a fully mathematical defined model in which this thing here is actually an edge. So it's an edge that from two different faces, so you can actually operate on that edge. You cannot operate on this edge because this is not an edge. This is a bunch of little things like these two triangles and these two vertices, and this is unusable for mechanical design. This is usable for this is good for other things, for rendering, for stuff like that, it works, but not for many more things than that. So some best practices. First of all, muscle memory, right? I'll tell you a 20-second story, right? I am from Uruguay. I moved into the US when I was already 38, so pretty kind of old. And I drove manual cars all my life, right? So at some point I had 2 cars in the US, a manual because I didn't want to drive automatic at the beginning, and then realized, hey, I'm in San Francisco and I had to start a car like this. So I just kind of, okay, give me an automatic. But one day I thought I was pressing the clutch to make a change of the gear, but it wasn't the automatic car. So I basically stopped the car short in the highway. And I almost created the most massive accident in California in history, right? Because I just stopped the car because I was thinking I was pushing the clutch. That is muscle memory. And you don't mess with muscle memory because you can have an accident. So in here, on Fusion, once you start on preferences, you can go into, just in general here, into an option which is called pan, zoom, and orbit shortcuts, and all of this will be available for everybody. So don't try to take notes to my kind of very fast thing. And one of the options is Tinkercad. So at that point, whatever you do in Tinkercad, like right click and for orbiting and all that stuff, works in Fusion. So you don't have to think about that. If you don't do that, Fusion has a different default that will I mean, it drives me crazy. It's just like, I can't. I just can deal with one way of navigating, right? So I do that. So I move this to Tinkercad, and then of course the Z is up already on Fusion. Actually, I changed that 2 years ago. So you can thank me or not about it. So it's the same direction. So that is default already, but in some cases you might find some models in which it's not default, and you want the Z up because then we're talking about the same coordinate system and we're talking about the same navigation. Another one, more muscle memory. In Tinkercad, when you click on something, you click on the object. You don't click on a face or an edge or nothing, right? In Fusion, there's a way under select to select priority and actually select body as a priority. At that point, you're actually clicking on bodies, which is great. And then if you want to fill it or chamfer or do some operations that require edges, Fusion is smart. So at that point, wants to just look for those things, right? But in the meantime, when you click on something, you click on a body and not just on whatever the clicker found, which is kind of crazy again if you're not used to it. So this can save you a lot of time and a lot of frustrations. Even more muscle memory. Customize your UI and bring some friends back. And the friends that I'm bringing back are some commands or things that I do in Tinkercad a lot, right? Like bringing the box or the cylinder or mirror up into the main UI, right? So the only thing you need to do is just go into create, for example, and hover, stay a while there on the far right, and this will show up, and they say pin to toolbar, and then this is my toolbar in Fusion. It's not like what Fusion comes by default. It's very much what I like on here, and it's very much not exactly the same, of course, but it has a lot of the things that we like about Tinkercad, right? So all of a sudden, again, it's a similar experience, or at least it's similar enough to let you get there with more confidence. Fusion has something called history. So when you send something to Fusion from Tinkercad, history will be off. So the first thing I would do on that case is click on this little thing here and capture design history. Design history is like a super undo, right? So if you undo on Tinker or any application, you just go one step back or two steps or just sequential steps back, right? If you enable the history on the timeline, you can go back to something that happened a long time ago, right? And make a change there, and it will repopulate and reevaluate everything according to that change. That's impossible on Tinkercad. You need to go back, unless you're doing code blocks, and at that point you go just to the code, right? Because the code block is almost like a timeline again. But in Fusion, that's part of the DNA of Fusion, and I think that is one of the things that is very important for everybody to understand and use from the beginning. It's very powerful. So capture design history, my recommendation. Number 5, use help. Fusion, and actually my team made this one, so I'm particularly proud of this one, is the learning panel. If you go to the help option in Fusion, the first option here is show learning panel. By the way, it only works right now in Fusion in English. It will work in other languages soon. But basically what this does is it's an active help, interactive help, that every time you click on a command in Fusion, it shows you what it does, and it gives you more information about what it does, which is, again, very, very convenient when you're just getting started. So everybody, learning panel, your best friend. It's better than Clippy. Those with some ears will remember, will know what I'm talking about. The others don't. Anyway, create components. When you get something into from Tinkercad into Fusion, each object, each group or individual object in Tinkercad will become a body in Fusion. I don't have to explain exactly what a body is. It's just a thing, a solid thing, a thingy. But sometimes you just want to put things together. Just imagine like the group in Tinkercad, but just put things together into one new construct that will move and operate independently. And this is what you do by creating the components. In this case, for example, I created 4 components for here: the 2 sticks, the enclosure, and the microbit. So then if I go to assemblies or animations or many other places, I can operate with just those things without having to think about, okay, now I need to select these 25 bodies to do something, right? So this is a very convenient thing to do. Not only convenient, it's necessary. Some things won't work if you don't have components. Understand what user stories or meshes. I kind of explained that already, but basically some things like parametric design, so design driven by variables, or creating drawings or managing parts for animations and stuff like that only works for solid models. So that's one of the reasons why you want to use Send to Fusion if you're starting from Tinkercad and sending to Fusion, right? As opposed to just exporting an STL and bring it into Fusion or to anywhere else. Because again, triangle soup, useless, except for rendering, useless. Inútil for my friends in Spanish. So number 8, once you start in Fusion 360 from scratch, because at some point you might say, okay, I'm done, I'm great, I love Tinkercad, right? Tinkercad. I love Tinkercad, but I kind of feel that I'm ready to just take the next step. I'm not afraid, I'm just confident. Thanks, Tinker team, for giving me this and then showing me the way to this other thing. I would still suggest you to start with primitives, with forms, with things that are still familiar with what you do on Tinkercad. And then you can start moving to sketching and parametric sketching and all the awesome stuff that you can do. Again, just training wheels, no training wheels, motorbike, car, right? I mean, just keep doing it slowly, right? So what can you do in Fusion? And this is just 6 things that I'm going to show, and I'm ending here. So Nisha, you'll have some time. I'm sorry. So use Fusion for detailing. In this case, it's I did the basic model in Tinkercad very fast. I mean, we can go so fast in Tinkercad, it's not even funny. I mean, probably faster than Fusion for something like a prototype. But then here I was a little more careful about how I was handling the smoothness of each of the parts. So this part here, right? All of that, doing fillets, chamfers, or hollowing bodies, or making some more complex stuff. So you really want to have a solid for that, because these operations don't work on meshes, right? So that's one thing. And again, you have this so you can read with more time. You can create renderings, beautiful images. Just you can make a poster with that, just impress everybody. And yeah, first of all, any color used in Tinkercad will become the same color as a material without color in Fusion. The good thing about that is, for example, if you use yellow for your microbit here, right? You can say, okay, that yellow material that I see on Fusion, I will switch it to copper, and done. Everything that was yellow is now copper. Easy, one operation, and then you render and demigod. Number 3, use Fusion for making. And making, in this case, is 3D printing, laser cutting, CNC, whatever system you have. We know that some high schools have glow forges or just small desk bots or stuff like that. So it's not just only 3D printing. But the good thing, even on 3D printing, is that remember that cylinder that people say, I want like crazy resolution because I want to print this thing on Tinkercad and that doesn't look good? if you take it to Fusion, it's a perfect circle. It doesn't matter if it has 6 faces on Tinkercad or it has 6,000. When you take it to Fusion, it's better than that. It's just a real circle, a real curved surface that when you 3D print, it will become a mesh again, but you have the power here to define the resolution, right? And you can provide the supports and everything. So we have a full solution, a full slicer in Fusion that you may want to use, or you might just want to take from Tinkercad to Fusion, export STL with more controls, and send to Cura or to whatever is your tool of choice for slicing, and there you go, happily ever after, without having to make our servers crazy with high resolution for nothing. Animations, we all like stuff moving, right? If you have components of all the things on Tinkercad, the way to use the timeline in Fusion is super easy. Work on a narrative. I mean, just the fact that you can move stuff doesn't mean that it makes sense, right? So create a story and help the kids understand how to tell a story about your process, right? Because at the end of the day, again, I was a teacher before too, right? So the end result was important, but what led you to that result is even more important, right? So that process, so let help them understand how to conceptualize all that and be their own kind of art directors. Simulation. This is a little tricky because simulation is something more advanced, but there's some simple things like stress analysis. Just put the right amount of strength on each side of the controller and see how this thing is about to break. And if it's about to break, it means it means more material. So then you can explain maybe, hey, this thing on the back actually it has just a tiny piece of plastic on the top because we have to have the connecting the microbit from the back, and so that might break the whole thing. So you might want to redesign it. So it's a great excuse to talk about iterations on design, right? Without having to break the real thing. And documentation. Many years ago, we all thought that drawings were going away because we were moving from models into directly machines. And it's kind of true in many cases, but definitely drawings are not going anywhere yet, anytime soon. So, and many people still ask for part of the exercise is bring me documentation. So Fusion has excellent drawing features that are basically coming from AutoCAD. So, and AutoCAD is the quintessential amazing kind of drawing tool ever in the history of the universe. So imagine, right? Fusion has AutoCAD inside for that, and you can use all those options only on solids. By the way, that's again another reason to send to Fusion and not use Mesh. Spoiler alert: this is not there yet, but very soon, and I cannot say exactly how soon because I don't know, but it's going to be in the next couple months. If you're working on Tinkercad on circuit design and you have these beautiful circuits for a line following robots, right? So it's just a couple lights with a sensor. So it takes the differential between both sensors and says, oh, I'm out of the line. So I have to turn on the other motor to turn the other way, right? All of this will now be able to be sent, not now, but just like December-ish, into Fusion. And in Fusion, you will already have a schematic. You will have a basic circuit board that then you can optimize and wire automatically in Fusion, and then go and design the whole thing if you want there, right? That's going to be amazing because we know that we have almost over 1 million monthly active users only on electronics on Tinkercad. Many of those people might be also using some other tools for the mechanical part, for the enclosure and anything, right? This is just crazy because you have electronics and fabrication of the PCB and fabrication of whatever you do as enclosure and the design of the enclosure in the same application. What? I mean, it's obvious choice. And last slide, I promise. Scenarios to consider, and this is important, right? Because sometimes we say graduation, and if you graduate from school, that means that you don't want to go back to school, right? So if you graduate from middle school to high school, that's just a low chance you go back to middle, unless you're a parent later, right? Or a volunteer, right? You don't want to go back as a student. So there's a world of Tinkercad and Fusion on the same project. Just because you want to get confidence on what you do in Fusion, you want to really just have something there to get started. Great. We offer those tools. At some point, you might not need that. You might just want to go all the way with Fusion, or sometimes, by the way, you can say, this is so simple, I can do it faster on Tinkercad. And it happens to me all the time. And so this is the and/or, right? So sometimes you just want to choose. I use Tinkercad for some projects. I use Fusion for some other projects, and it's okay, right? Using Tinkercad, once you know Fusion, is not a regression, right? It's just being smart by choosing the right tool for the right thing. Just like our toolbox. I mean, we have the hammer and the this and this and that. I mean, and we just use the right one. And sometimes the simple one is the right one, believe me. And at the end, yeah, I mean, you might have people that just move fully into Fusion because they're really pursuing a path in mechanical design, in the industrial design, in machining, in anything like that. Yeah, and great. I mean, that's a great thing for us to have been a part of, a companion on that trip, and that's great also. So how do I get Fusion? This was already mentioned a little bit at the beginning, right? So I'll just give this slide is going to be on the deliverables you'll get, right? So I don't have to explain right now, but yeah, just create an account and you can provide seeds for your students in Fusion without having to go through verification, which is just not the greatest pro. And they are just working in seconds, right? So, and by the way, there's an option also for Chromebooks, right? So you can not only on Windows and Mac. So yeah, I mean, I hope that all of this didn't confuse you more than where you were kind of coming from. I'm looking forward to watching questions and maybe answering some later. And I'll leave the floor to my friend Nisha. Nisha,
Thank you, Guillermo. Oh, no worries. I was going ahead to just hop into the next thing, but go ahead. I know there's a question.
I was on mute, which is the theme of this year, I think.
I left you speechless.
No, I was thinking, what I was saying was that I wanted to thank Guillermo because he is, one of the magicians who makes the magic of Tinkercad and Tinkercad Diffusion. I feel like not a lot of people can be someone who makes the magic, but can also explain the magic. So I was taking notes, Guillermo. And in thinking about learning, this is just a question we wanted to push out to you before we meet Nisha, who on the topic of magic is also magical, and you'll find that out soon. We wanted to ask you this question. So what social learning communities or even resources do you use for your professional growth? So, do you watch videos on YouTube? Are there networks that you're connected with? For social learning, ISTE or, some other, or, other communities you might not know about, maybe it's Twitter, please let us know in the chat. And I also just I noticed people raising their hands. We will, at the end, we will have a question and answer. So if you want your question answered, I know Jenny has been diligently collecting those questions as well. So without further ado, part B with Nisha, please take it away.
Hello. So because we're in our very modern age, you have to give me 1 second in order to make sure you guys can actually see what I'm throwing down. Okay, perfect. Oh, nope, no. See, this is when we're cheating a little bit. You guys are getting a little bit too much of a sneak peek. Avert your eyes.
Rewind.
Oh, Lord. No one sees anything. Perfect. We're back
I
at the
saw
beginning.
Nothing, Nisha. I don't even know what you're talking about.
So while everyone's answering the question about their social learning communities, I wanted to also ask you all to add in the chat. This is just for my curiosity. I know most of you know the icon on this slide, and I just wanted to know, what do you refer to the actual items that this icon eats on a routine basis and a recreational activity? I've heard some people refer to it as dots, pellets, cookies, Pac-Man dots, Pac dots, and for the sake of the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'm just curious what you all would call this, just so I can get a feel for what kind of diversity that we have in the chat and online tonight. So while you're doing that and being very active on the actual Q&A and chat boards, let me go ahead and get us started. Welcome to It Knows It's Late, and now all the technology decides to be weird. There we go. So hi, my name is Netia McCray. I'm the founder and executive director of Bajika. Bajika is a STEM nonprofit organization, and I like to say that we're focused on ideas and those who create them. What does that mean exactly? Well, my passion is bringing ideas to reality. That means product design and development in all of its forms, whether it means a CAD model, whether it means electronics, whether it means actually figuring out whatever is necessary in order to bring that idea to reality. That's what we do. So, one of the things that I love to share with other people is my journey learning CAD. So my very first CAD model was creating a Hello Kitty water bottle. And I would say that was the moment about 12 years ago that I became hooked on the potential of communicating an idea that was in my notebook. I admittedly am not an artist, so being able to communicate with someone the actual dimensions, what material, what color schemes, etc., that I wanted them to create for a class in my college was mind-blowing. And I think that's what made me realize the power of tools such as Tinkercad and Fusion 360, even in the hands of people who are not self-professed engineers or makers who feel like this is their bread and butter. Just a little side note, my favorite CAD model of all time was when I got the chance to create a Black Panther inspired 3D printed crown. I say that's hands down because I get to pull out that crown for all holidays and birthdays, and the family members have now taken their pictures with that crown. So that one is very close to me. So following up on what Guillermo was talking about, this is just a sneak peek at a clip that I created with Autodesk regarding the differences between Tinkercad and Fusion 360 and when and how would you use each environment to approach a project. A lot of times you'll have students look at Tinkercad and they're like, oh, that's the baby step before I become a real engineer or maker and I graduate to Fusion 360. And I think that's not the right way to look at it. Just like we saw on the slide with Guillermo, of course, there are going to be some students, they're going to have a complex project and they're going to need to immediately go into Fusion 360. But I think a lot of my peers and my students are shocked when I tell them, as a part of my brainstorming process, I use Tinkercad with 10 years of CAD experience. A lot of them are like, you? Like, Tinkercad is for babies if you know how to use Fusion. And I'm like, no. Tinkercad is a tool to help me brainstorm and figure out what type of solution I want to develop and then how to further develop that solution. So on that note, let me present to you a problem or a challenge that one of my students brought to me. So here we have a lovely picture of two young men. One is named Calvin, he's 13 years old, and his brother Ezekiel, who's 6, are a loving, loving pair of siblings. Can't you tell from the photo? And these two siblings have a close bond. And Calvin is one of my students, and he came up to me and was like, hey, my almost 6-year-old brother Ezekiel, he's really into space and I want to make him a space helmet, but he's also interested in knights and medieval cartoons, and he's also interested in ninjas. So I need to figure out the most awesome birthday gift to give him, and I want to create it with my own hands. What should I do? And with that student, of course, I'm going to take him immediately into Tinkercad. And with some fumbling and some tweaks and some brainstorming, this is what we came up with. One of the things I love about Tinkercad as a tool is that when a student looks at this looks like a pretty complex CAD model, right? It looks like you spent hours upon it, but really it only utilizes 4 basic shapes: a cylinder, a roof, a half sphere, and a box. And the fact that you can communicate to students that you can have 4 basic shapes, and through manipulating them, turning them into holes, combining them, you can create almost any shape in the universe that you want to bring to reality. And I think that's the understated beauty, as Guillermo was talking about, of Tinkercad as a powerful tool to level up even your most basic designs. So, how much time do I have? Okay, do I have about 5 minutes?
You're good, Nisha, don't worry about it.
Okay, so I think it'll be really cool to actually go through how simple it is to level up not only your Tinkercad designs, but how you can actually use Tinkercad and level it up, whether it's a simple CAD model or a more advanced CAD model like this in Fusion 360. But the educator in me also likes this to be kind of fun. So I know everyone can raise their hands, right? Everyone knows the yellow hand in the Zoom environment. So regardless of where you call home, I know you know who this character is. I'm specifically not mentioning their name, just in case there's some things happening in the universe or legal. But if you know this character, what I want you to do, anytime you see this slide, you're supposed to be doing this. If the character's going this, do this. If the character is eating down, do this. I'm not going to see it, but that's not the point. The point is for you to understand that as we're going through this, you're leveling up as well. And despite your age, you actually moving some part of your body is going to help you understand that you're leveling up as well. Given, you know, you could also eat pellets, and you eating more pellets will help you understand you're leveling up. Besides the point, let's get started. So when we were thinking about how we will go about with this space helmet for Ezekiel, I immediately was like, I know what shape we can utilize. We can use the half sphere from the basic shapes toolbar, because as we know, our head shape is like a dome. So why not utilize the half sphere, duplicate it, make a hole, and create almost like a dome sphere to put on the top of the helmet. Then I duplicated it, drag a box shape from the basic shapes toolbar, because I wanted to add a little bit 1980s samurai soldier fighting some turtles from a sewer flair to my helmet. I decided to transform my box into a hole, merge one of the half spheres together in order to make a nice like mohawk aesthetic on the top of my helmet. And just like that, we already have one part of the space helmet done, only utilizing two basic shapes. So you see, you already ate some pellets. See, it's only corny in your silo. Imagine how I feel. Exactly. Should we continue? Okay, let's keep going. So another shape that I utilized from the basic shapes toolbar was the cylinder shape. And what I did with the cylinder, I was like, well, we need to wrap his actual head, right? So how about I hollow out the cylinder by duplicating it, creating one of the duplicates as a whole, merging a group, and then dragging another box shape in order to make the opening so you can actually see the face, or maybe even place a face guard or a visor for Ezekiel so he can really feel like a medieval knight who just so happened to travel to space on a ninja-inspired mission. And we just ate some more. It's like that. It's almost like we're constantly eating and constantly leveling up. Okay, we're about to go a little bit faster, because as you know in video games, the more you progress, the faster and harder things become. So let's continue. This is where we start utilizing a lot more tools in the Tinkercad environment. So remember I mentioned I thought it'll be really cool to have like a face guard or a visor in this actual space helmet. Well, when we look at those knights helmets from the back in the day, they have a triangle shape. So of course, I'm going to look at my basic shapes toolbar and drag my roof shape and utilize that in order to make a really cool face guard. So see here that I've dragged a roof from the basic shapes toolbar. I rotated it a couple of times, modified, duplicated, merged to make a nice little triangle there piece to actually fit on the helmet. And then I made 3 roof shapes. Oh, I told you, very interactive. You never know when it's going to pop up. I also don't know when this slide will change. So here is where we start leveling up a little bit further. So now we have all these components that we need to actually fit together to make a prototype of what the space helmet looks like. So you see in the first spot that I actually aligned the top cap helmet components, if my mouse will let me be the fearless leader I envisioned. So you see in the first GIF that I actually aligned the components of the top cap of the base in order to make sure those were aligned, because I don't know if you've ever had a baseball cap that wasn't sewn properly, but you want to protect all of your skull. You don't want some of your skull exposed. That's not a really cool look or an awesome birthday gift for a 6-year-old. We move forward and we use one of the most underutilized tools in my classrooms and workshops, which is the ruler tool in Tinkercad, because I will see students sit there for 30 minutes trying to align something instead of grabbing the tool and just selecting an endpoint and aligning the components based on that ruler tool. I'm not doing that because this is a prototype and I like rapid product design and development, so I'm using my ruler tool here. I'm using my view cube in my upper corner to review my components, because if you're familiar with Tinkercad, the worst thing you can do is have a component floating out in space that looked good in one view, but when you tilt your view cube, you realize nothing's touching. Number 4, I did a little bit more adjustments and alignments, and you can start to see why I actually did 3 roof shapes. It's because I wanted to have a lens as well as a mouth guard be part of the face guard. So we have the full night experience happening with the space helmet. And then last but not least, I assembled the base and the face guard and group. And so, everyone's like, it's too late on a Thursday. Trust me, I know. So now we get to the point of what do we do next? And I like a little bit of flair when it comes to my projects. And so here I'm dragging another cylinder shape from the basic shapes toolbar in order to add a bolt to the side of my helmet, because again, it's supposed to be a space helmet. You gotta have a little bit of flair. I also utilized my roof shape and I made a duplicate, dragged another box shape over and cut it in half in order to make a really cool microphone so Ezekiel can communicate with his brother when they're on their imaginary space missions, because why just have a boring night helmet? Like, they didn't have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi back then, but we do if we're going to space. So let's add a little bit of flair to it. I did a couple of color changes because I know that 6-year-old Nisha loves pink and purple, but probably Ezekiel is not going to go for pink and purple. So I probably need to add a little bit of ninja flair to my designs. And as you can see, everything is utilizing the Tinkercad environment to take a basic shape and mold it to whatever my imagination wants it to be. And then, is it the mysterious eating stranger from a recreational activity? No. We actually have a complete build. So as you can see here is the original version of my helmet CAD model that I made to fit my aesthetic. And then here's version 2 when I actually brought it to Ezekiel and he was like, I like purple and black. So as you see, I just used Tinkercad to do a few color edits. And there we have it. We have a complete Tinkercad model. And we leveled up with a couple of basic shapes that all of your students are familiar with or can be familiar with within an hour of exploring the Tinkercad environment. Now, I think do I have like 2 more minutes to show them a little bit more leveling up?
Bring us to Fusion, Nisha.
Oh, see, you already know, you know the next step. So once we have our grips on an actual model that we love in Tinkercad, one of the easiest ways to level up any design, and Guillermo showed a little sneak peek of it, is to export your Tinkercad model using the Send to Fusion 360 tool or feature in Tinkercad. So I can easily include everything in my Tinkercad model and export it in one click to Fusion 360, and just immediately it's night and day. When Ezekiel looks at the Tinkercad model in its original form, he's like, oh yeah, like it looks cartoonish, but I can see it. Once he sees it in the Fusion 360 environment, the connection between what he sees engineers doing on TV or on YouTube and how they create products is what he immediately sees with just a simple button of exporting our Tinkercad model. But we're not finishing leveling up because I have a good minute or 2 left. Let's continue. In Fusion 360, even if your students are not completely familiar or you yourself as an educator are a little by the environment, don't be. There's superstar tools that are easily accessible for you while you're getting your ways and your bones about how to utilize Fusion 360. So one of the superstar tools I appreciate, and it's my tip your toe in the pool sort of way, is utilizing the render workspace in Fusion 360. So you see here, all I do is I change my workspace from design to render. I know about a quarter of us have never touched Tinkercad or Fusion 360. Don't worry, if you want to know the difference between workspaces, think about, would you rather bake a cake in the kitchen or the garage? Both of them have tools to help you do stuff, but you want to be in the workspace that helps you do what you want to do. So all we're doing is changing our workspace from the design workspace to render. Once we are render, we can see the true power of just exporting our Tinkercad model with that click of a button happen, with utilizing the change the appearance feature to make all of our bodies look like the materials and textures and colors we envision the real life helmet model would look like. Also, if you want to be a little bit fancy, you can also alter the scene settings so you can have the light hit your model just right for its photo shoot. And we're getting to the last bit, but don't fret. What I'm excited to announce is that we're working on a series of videos to help you transition from Tinkercad to Fusion 360, or how to truly level up with both of these softwares. From my experience utilizing Tinkercad and Fusion 360, I understand there's a gap when you have students who have been in Tinkercad and they ask that question of what's next, and how to get them over that gap into Fusion 360 in order to create more complex, more refined, more advanced builds, and truly reflect as close as possible the ideas they want to bring to reality. We have 5 videos in we have 5 videos in development to walk you step by step through this process. The first one, you just got a sneak peek of. See, all of those wobbles, you just went through it. It's starting a design in Tinkercad, exporting a design from Tinkercad to Fusion 360, modifying a design in Fusion 360, rendering a design in Fusion 360, and creating a technical drawing in Fusion 360. Our hope is that these 5 videos will help bridge the gap for you as well as your peers and students on how do you bring your ideas to reality using these level up tools. And so before we sign off, I just want to say, do not look at Fusion 360 as the end all be all. As I mentioned before, I still have love for Tinkercad and I still utilize it for my professional product design and development, what I do for clients, as well as in the classroom. I want you to leave this webinar thinking of Fusion 360 and Tinkercad this way. They're both great tools, but knowing when and where to apply them and how to apply them, it's what's going to set your creations as well as your student creations to another level and out of this world. And if there's any video game cheat I've ever heard of, it's that one. So thank you all so much.
That was awesome, Nisha. I'm not sure if I ate too many power pellets or garage cakes, but I do feel like I've learned so much from your presentation. I knew that I would. So I'm going to just share my screen quickly because I believe that Dr. Daria is back to take another pulse of the room.
So now that we've gotten multiple versions of how you can start with Tinkercad, whether you're totally new to Tinkercad and leveling up to Tinkercad lesson plans, learning how to teach with Tinkercad and our latest release on Tinkercad activities, or how to go from Tinkercad to Fusion and determine when your students are ready for that next step. Both from Guillermo and Nisha, we would love to hear in the chat, what are the next steps that you could take to level up in Tinkercad? Please share it in the chat, and as you're typing, we'll also launch a poll to get your feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Daria. I might need your professional assistance because I think I ate too many garage cakes.
Yes,
That
and
was my
our
favorite
poll
comment in the
question is, our poll question is, how likely are you to take the next step with Tinkercad after this webinar? And again, that next step is totally dependent on where you are, so don't feel obligated to make the jump from, completely new to Fusion or wherever you are. So we hope that from this webinar you've taken some good notes on where that can take you as the next step, and we'd like to know how likely you're going to try that.
And I think you have another announcement to make, Daria.
I do. So what's really exciting, and we've heard from tons of folks on these webinars in the past, is how can I get one of these fancy, Tinkercad mugs or shirts or other swag? And what we are going to announce really, really soon, so stay tuned by following Tinkercad or Instructables on social media, is a 30 days of Tinkercad activities challenge. And you are hearing about it here first. So the challenge will be available beginning Monday, November 1st. It'll run month long to the end of November. And our goal is really to get you to use Tinkercad activities, try it out with your students, and share a screenshot of how you're using it with your students, whether that's in a class block, a lesson plan, or a co-teaching period. And we'd love to see, so submit that to the form that we'll have active starting Monday. And in return, we'd love to share with you a classroom kit, which Kellyanne has graciously shared here. Each classroom pack includes 30 student kits. Each kit includes a pouch with lots of other Tinkercad swag, so definitely stay tuned. We'll be announcing the official giveaway and challenge on Monday, so please stay tuned. It's non-competitive, there's no judging involved, so anyone who participates will be able to get a swag pack as long as supplies last. So there you have it.
Thank you. While supplies last, which means you got to get on it soon. So just again, Tinkercad, I hope that you have experienced, if you're new to Tinkercad, that Tinkercad isn't just an educational technology or a design tool, but it's also a community. So do please stay connected with us, stay connected with each other. In this slide, when you get it in the email and your follow-up email, you can click on all these links to find out different ways to connect with us. And you can always use the hashtag #TinkerTogether. We also, when we are emailing you the follow-up email, we wish we could give you the world, but right now we can give you this certificate. So if you're using this webinar series for your professional development, you really put in some overtime tonight as well. So we want to recognize that by sharing with you this certificate. So you should be checking your email for this as well. Please do, as we are transitioning or transforming into a gang of rectangles so that we can answer your questions, please do tell us. We always want to hear from you which topics you'd like for us to cover in future webinars. So do please let us know that in the chat. And also, I'm sure Jenny has collected so many questions to ask during the question and answer. She's going to get ready for that right now.
Our crew has done such a great job in answering questions along the way that have appeared in the Q&A and the chat. I'm struggling to find a lot that's been unanswered. I want to invite people, if you have any remaining questions, please add them to the chat. I also want to share with everyone that there's been a lot of enthusiasm around all the presentations tonight. So thank you. I just want to give you that summary in case our presenters haven't been following the chat very closely.
I'm glad this doesn't feel like Tinkercad detention.
Yes, so I'm looking to see if there's any other questions that we haven't answered yet. A webinar about circuits would be awesome. Let's see. Tips and tricks that make creating more efficient. I think these are answers to our last question. Any questions for our staff here?
Our Tinkercad Jeopardy champion is not with us tonight, Christian.
Right.
Again.
Yeah. Is there a Tinkercad Clever connection?
Yeah, so that's kind of dependent on your school district, I think, determines whether Tinkercad is in Clever.
I can answer that. Probably they're asking about a single sign-on with Clever. No, there's no single sign-on with Clever. Okay. There might be in the future because it requires some coordination between the companies and a couple of other things. But yeah, we are aware.
If you have any last questions, this is your time to put it. There's questions about the shirt. Darin, did you get your shirt? And there was also a question about the Tinker Dad shirt as well.
Yeah, that one's a little more custom, but I got my shirt from Autodesk, but we've gone out before, so.
Yeah. How does Inventor compare to Fusion? Anyone want to address that?
I can.
Okay.
So Inventor is an extremely complete mechanical design tool. Fusion is it's becoming a platform, right? So it has a design piece, but also has the simulation and the fabrication, right? All the whole flow, data management inside instead of using Vault. So yeah, it's and you'll see more and more Inventor tools also coming into Fusion in the future. Doesn't mean that any of those are going away. It's just that we're trying to make sure that the reason to have a platform is to have everything working with the same data, right, in a smart way, and the Fusion platform is that path forward.
And this is a question that's come up before, about how many miles has Matthew logged?
I think I'm currently around, I don't turn it off, so I'm at 24 miles, but that's not just right now. So that's,
yeah.
You gotta work off eating all those power pellets. They're high calorie.
A lot of power pellets.
Mhm.
Yeah, not.
For the benefit of those who aren't tuning in live but are watching this on demand, would it be beneficial to answer any of the questions live about?
Oh
I think
yeah.
I saw a couple of Q&As about, is it possible to export Tinkercad designs to the browser version of Fusion? Other software questions?
I'm looking through those right now. There's a lot of questions about the recording, and I think we all know the recording will be sent out by Tuesday. Let's see.
Hey, Guillermo, this just came in. If a teacher creates a classroom, is there a limit to the number of students they can have join with seats or nicknames?
Darin, we have a limit, but it's pretty high.
I think it's like 200. I'm not sure. Christian knows that one exactly, but it's pretty high.
It was 50. We move it up. If you have a classroom at middle school with 200 kids, just come and help. We'll help you. You'll probably need more help than just Tinkercad.
Oh, maybe
Could be 250
classes or something. Yeah, putting them all under one list is
It's
hard to manage anyway. So
yeah, I mean more than that, it will become complicated to manage also on a side. But yeah, it's I think 200 is the limit.
I'll repeat a couple of the questions that were logged in our Q&A. Can you use classroom activities to lead students through microbit lessons?
you can show them circuits. So if you're using circuits in the microbit we have in there, yeah, that should work just fine.
Mm-hmm. And can students add designs to the activities that they created outside of the activities tab?
Yeah, just like the teacher, they can go to their dashboard and use the gear menu to say, add this to an activity, pick the class, pick the activity, and it'll appear.
Yeah.
We have a question from a high school art teacher who is teaching a class that combines new tech and design. Is there anything you think would be a must topic to cover, either in technique or concept? So teaching a class that combines new technology and design. What topics come to mind? Anyone want to take that?
An arts teacher?
Yeah, a high school art teacher who is teaching a class, whoops, it scrolled past me, that combines new technology and design. Is there anything that you think would be a must topic to cover, either in technique or concept?
Wearables. That is a must to discuss. Whether it is physically wearing the wearables, such as we all know there's a ton of instructables on how do you embed electronic circuits or use microbits or lily pads to just level up based on the theme we're going with tonight, your clothing or your everyday items. I also think one of the nice things about the merging of these two fields is that it doesn't have to be a wearable in the sense that it's something you actually wear. It could be a physical product that you're creating to express yourself. I think New View is one of the design schools who has a very strong social media presence. So it's spelled N-U-V-U. If you want to look at some examples of the intersections between these fields for some project ideas. I also know a friend of Autodesk, Dr. Natrice Gaskins, who's now a Ford Fellow. So congratulations to her. her entire work is on the intersection between these two, and she utilizes algorithms, whether to create actual pieces of clothing or to design algorithmic art, whatever the case may be. That's the perfect people to look at for project and school activities. Those are the people I look at because I'm not an artist by trade. So when I am being forced by my students to exercise my creative brain, I look to them to get ideas.
Yeah, Matrice has taken a James Brown song and turned it into a kinetic sculpture. So I recommend her as an inspiration.
There's also, if we're just thinking of art, there's a lot of opportunities for storytelling and building concepts. So we talked earlier about using it as a sketching tool. Even if you don't know exactly what you're going to build, you can mock it up, draw over that as a rendering. I do that all the time. Send it out to another tool to make a game concept like Unreal or Unity or something like that. AR, VR, those are great ways to export Tinkercad models and see what they look like. And you can use the iPad if you have it to try that yourself with the AR viewer.
And I feel like NFTs are a fun concept to explore with students, both kind of conceptually, like philosophically, in terms of art, you know, and you can get into technical, you know, aspects like generative art too.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any other new questions come up.
Well, maybe it's about that time. I know on the East Coast, it's 8:30 right now, so you got to get lots of sleep for tomorrow when students come in with their costumes, or maybe their electronic wearables. That would be cool too. So before we sign off, I just want to thank all of the teachers and educators who came out tonight to join us and to keep this a two-way conversation and connect with each other, continue to connect on Tinkercad. I'd like to thank our special guest, Nisha, for bringing her magic to our webinar series tonight. She did an awesome job, and we are so thankful for her sharing her gifts with us, both gifts. That's the only place we disagree, I think, right now is gifts and gifs, but gifts and gifts to us. And, you know, obviously, the rest of the Tinkercad Autodesk family. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us for tonight. And we are going to sign off for now. So thank you. Take care. Have fun at school tomorrow. Good night.
Good luck.
Yes. Buena suerte. Right.